What's going on, man? Welcome back to the basement. I'm Ron. It's about that time I know a lot of you guys have been waiting for. We are finally talking redraft fantasy football for the 2023 season. I think this is our first outlined, researched video for this upcoming fantasy season. So sit tight. We're going to talk through my 3 must-draft offenses I'm targeting in every single one of my fantasy drafts on Underdog. As always, if you enjoy, make sure you go down below, subscribe, leave a like. Let's go.
Thirsty, trying to choose. I know I'm critical. My nitty bag.
Now, I wanted to bring this up before I hit the intro, but I didn't want it to be this long-winded intro. But the kind of, the idea for this video came from, we did like my first must-draft wide receiver video from last year. I just pretty much gushed about A.J. Brown for 10 minutes. And the whole idea was that we bet on the Eagles offense heavy last year. If you followed this channel, all of us had Eagles across the board. We thought after adding A.J. Brown and looking at the early season of 2021 splits, despite the Eagles being last in pass attempts in 2021, we thought that could come, sort of back to the mean towards league average in 2022 because of the moves that they made in the offseason. Then, of course, that's what happened. They ended up 10th in pass rate over expectation last year. Everybody smashed, right? We see here in terms of advance rate, your implied advance rate is 2 divided by 12 in Best Ball Mania on Underdog. 2 divided by 12 is 16.67%. Your 5 main guys on that Eagles roster last year, Jalen Hurts, Miles Sanders, A.J. Brown, Devonta Smith, Dallas Goedert, all exceeded that advance rate, all absolutely smashed. They all increased their ADP since that year. And if you had them on your team, your teams were great. The whole offense exploded. Of course, Jalen Hurts was great, but it spreads to the entire system, the entire offense. Everybody kind of gets lifted by such an explosive offense. A rising tide lifts all ships, as they say. And even on, I have to flex this every once in a while. I have to let you guys know that I'm out here in these streets. My best team last year, we ended up 5th place in the online championship on NFC. Netted us like just over $10,000. This team had A.J. Brown in the 2nd round, Devonta Smith in the 6th round, or Devonta Smith in the 7th round. And Devonta Smith's, he had like 2 20-point games down the stretch that really helped push us forward on that team. So the whole idea behind this video is finding this year's Eagles offense that is assumed to be run heavy and not that great, that takes this massive step forward where all the pieces on that team absolutely smash. Now, we're going to have 3 different offenses. The first one's kind of a gimme. The second one's a little bit more out there, and then the third one's a long shot. So one of the more obvious ones we'll talk about here is the Baltimore Ravens. Now, the market's starting to come around on the Ravens. The reason why I say that they're kind of obvious here is because I think if you polled people, I actually had like a poll on Twitter earlier today what people thought that the Ravens would end up in pass attempts, and it wasn't bottom 5, right, where they've been the last few years. Now, I will say, someone I'm working on having on the channel, Mike Clay, we use his projections all the time, and he has them still projected, the Ravens, for 31st in dropbacks and 32nd in pass attempts. So he still believes they're going to be a low-volume pass offense, despite all the moves they've made this offseason with adding, Zay Flowers and Odell Beckham and bringing in a new offensive coordinator. So I kind of want to challenge that a little bit here and say I don't expect the 32nd most attempts or the 31st dropbacks for this new-look Ravens offense. Now, of course, the Ravens have been bottom 5 in pass attempts in 3 of Lamar's 4 seasons as a starter. They've been bottom 10 in neutral pace of play all 4 seasons, so they have been slow and run heavy, but that has been because of Greg Roman, the previous offensive coordinator. Now, they've brought in Todd Monken, who is really excited, and this is a great quote from Jim Harbaugh here, kind of talking about what he expects and what will be different. And he says it's 100% likely that it will be different. It's always changing. This will be a bigger change because we've got a new offensive coordinator. We've got new coaches in place. I think we're going to be exciting. We're going to be fun. We're going to still run the ball, but we're going to throw the ball. We're going to be up-tempo, probably even more than we've been, maybe a little more no huddle. We're going to be living in a lot of different worlds with our offense, and that's what I'm looking forward to. Now, we have a highlighted section here. However, this was probably the 3rd time where Harbaugh mentioned picking up the pace on offense. It was also a popular topic during Harbaugh's offense coordinator interviews after Greg Roman's departure. So it's clear that Jim Harbaugh not only wants to move on from the offense they've had in the past, but he wants a new, more exciting offense, which he brings in Todd Monken to do that, and that is the perfect hire here. Now, I'm not saying I expect the Ravens to be top 5 in pass attempts. There's no shot that happens because dropbacks in a Lamar Jackson offense becomes scrambles, let's say 10% of the time. I don't know what the actual number is, but you're never going to be top 5 in pass attempts with Lamar Jackson unless if your defense is just god-awful. And even then, I think it would be tough. But these are Greg Roman's numbers, right? So 2022 through 2019, the last 4 years with Lamar Jackson, their ranks in pass attempts and neutral pace ranks. Now, neutral pace is just pace of play, how fast you're snapping the ball in non-garbage time situations. And then we have Todd Monken, his 3 years of calling plays for Tampa Bay. Now, he does have a 4th year as the offensive coordinator with the Browns under Freddie Kitchen, but in that offense, Freddie Kitchen was actually calling the plays. So I don't really want to use that year's sample. If we look here at Tampa Bay, it is just much more pass-heavy, up-tempo across the board, right? We're talking 4th in pass attempts, 3rd in pass attempts, 16th in pass attempts, neutral pace 5th, 11th, 8th, right? So these are, flirting with top 10, top 15 type numbers across the board. Again, I'm not expecting top 5 numbers with Lamar, but I think he's going to go from a bottom 5 pass attempt team to somewhere league average, right around like that 15th to 20th range, maybe 15th to 24th, 25th in that area. And that is massive for a Lamar Jackson team because Lamar Jackson is so efficient. I think that it's so funny that people give Lamar so much slack as a passer. He is one of the most efficient passers in the NFL. Like, even Mike Clay gives him that respect. We see these passing numbers, right? 32nd in pass attempts, but 11th in passing touchdowns. Lamar Jackson, what he does is he throws touchdowns on a low amount of attempts, which is exciting because if you jack up the attempts, we should have fireworks for fantasy. If we look just among active players here, this is just something pretty simple. Among active players, Lamar Jackson is one of just 3 active quarterbacks right now with above a 6% touchdown percentage. So that means 6.1% of Lamar Jackson's pass attempts are touchdowns for his entire career. That's his rookie year, MVP season, everything since then. And the only guys that are higher are Patrick Mahomes and Aaron Rodgers. He's above Russell Wilson, Watson, Josh Allen, Burrow, all of these studs. He is ahead of them. So when we add more attempts to the fold and we add just more snaps to the fold with more pace, we're going to be, looking at an upside of like 40-plus passing touchdowns for Lamar Jackson if everything hits the exact way we can. Now, the important thing to really note with this video is we're talking about the upside of these offenses. I'm not saying 100% this is going to be a team that is top 15 in pass attempts and Lamar Jackson throws 40-plus touchdowns, but the upside is there. Like, if we look at a team that's more pass-heavy, I'm trying to think off the top of my head. Maybe not the Cowboys because they're bringing in McCarthy, but it's tougher to bake in upside on a team that's kind of already maxed out from a snaps and pass attempts perspective. But if you're low on the pass attempts and snaps perspective and you have an efficient quarterback, everything can just get jacked up all the way, which is what I think we're looking at with Lamar Jackson. Now, again, this is a guy who people love to sleep on, but he won an MVP without a 1,000-yard wide receiver or 1,000-yard receiver in general, and he threw 36 passing touchdowns as the league leader in passing touchdowns that year, despite playing one less game than the field. Then we now get, right, so we go from, of course Mark Andrews and Marquise Brown are great, but like Hayden Hurst, Willie Snead, Nick Boyle was one of his top guys. We get a sign from the front office that they're now all in on wanting to make this an aerial attack on offense, where they bring in first-rounder Zay Flowers, first-rounder Rashad Bateman from a couple years ago, Odell Beckham. You still have Mark Andrews there. You're going to see more multiple tight end groupings with Todd Monken as well. I want to say that was something he did with Tampa Bay, where he had Cameron Brate and O.J. Howard out there a lot of the time, and you're going to get Isaiah Likely, and even I think Charlie Collar is going to kind of get in the mix here in some heavier formations that they can pass out of and have a lot of fun with. So I'm very excited. I think across the board, a lot of these guys are good values. These are what they're looking like on Underdog. By the way, if you don't know what Underdog is, we're going to be referring to it all video for just ADP context here. But Underdog, fantasy football platform. You go on Underdog Fantasy. I'll have a link down below in the description and a link at the top of the comments below. Use promo code Ron. Click the link. It'll bring you there. It'll put my promo code in. It'll match your first deposit up to $100. You have the Poodle out right now, which is a $7 entry. I think like $30,000 to first place. Only 20 entries max, so there's no big sharks in there loading up 150 entries or anything. It's a really beginner-friendly contest right now, and you can get in there and kind of get a feel for ADP this far out, get some skin in the game, get exposed to some different ADPs, and have some fun. We should be streaming one of those probably tomorrow, is what I would say. Now, when we look at this list, I want to bet on everyone. I did big board drafts in the spring, which were before the NFL draft. Lamar was my most owned quarterback. Andrews was my most owned tight end. I'm still all in on those guys. I think Mark Andrews, if Travis Kelce's he's a 6th overall pick in underdog. If Travis Kelce is the 6th overall pick, Mark Andrews being a 3rd round pick is insanity to me. I think Dobbins could kind of have a Miles Sanders type resurgence this year. And then I love, of course, these 3 wide receivers, not all of them are going to hit, right? Zay Flowers, Rashad Bateman, Odell Beckham. All of them can't hit, but they're priced in a way where they're suppressing each other, and they're all of value to me. Now, I wouldn't draft all 3 on the same team, but I'm sprinkling them in, just kind of rotating between them. I would say probably my best bet would be Rashad Bateman to lead them in fantasy points this year, but Zay Flowers is a rookie, could, come on towards the end, kind of like we saw with Amon-Ra St. Brown in his rookie year. We've seen with a lot of those guys, Ayuk, A.J. Brown, Deebo Samuel. So we'll see what happens, but they're all outside the top 40 wide receivers, so I love just taking stabs on them where I can. Now, the rest of them are really, really deep sleepers. Gus Edwards is also a fun 0 RB flyer. Now, our next offense here that we'll be talking about is the Cleveland Browns. The Cleveland Browns. Now, this one's a little bit less obvious. We have Kevin Stefanski, who has been historically a run-heavy play caller, right? 30th in pass attempts in Minnesota in 2019. Then he gets the head coaching job with Cleveland, 28th in Cleveland, 28th in 2021, 21st in 2022. So last year was actually his highest pass attempt offense, but you wouldn't really know that from looking at the stats, right? There weren't a good passing offense. The volume didn't really even translate to anything. I guess Amari Cooper and Njoku were fine for stretches, but I think that 21st season is just a signal of what he wants to get towards. Now, this NY divided by A column is net yards per attempt. That's just your efficiency on a per attempt basis. How many yards per attempt are you averaging? And it nets out maybe interceptions and some other junk. But you can see he actually saw a lot more efficiency in 2019 and 2020, right? 5th in net yards per attempt, 11th in net yards per attempt, then 22nd, then 20th. The hope is that we see that 21st pass offense, the 21st attempts pass offense either stay the same or go up into the 10 to 15 range or even higher than that if we're lucky. And then we also see that yards per attempt go up in Deshaun's first year. Now, you can say whatever you want about Deshaun. He has been efficient his entire career. So the bet really is that in this pass-heavier offense under Kevin Stefanski, can Deshaun bounce back? And my guess would be yes. Those yards per attempt numbers, 8.3, 8.2, 7.8, 8.9, all elite. Deshaun is up there in terms of yards per attempt in his career, similar to Lamar Jackson in terms of touchdown percentage. Deshaun Watson, yards per attempt, efficiency, all of that. He is right in the Mahomes, Aaron Rodgers tier, right? It's those two, and then it's Deshaun Watson on a per attempt efficiency basis. Completion percentage, he had his worst completion percentage by far. It was the first time he ever scored under 21.3 fantasy points per game. I'm not saying he's going to come back next year and copy what he did in 2020 or any of these years, but I would expect somewhere in the middle, right? I wouldn't expect 58% completion percentage. So that would just be absurd. I would expect maybe low 60s, and the yards per attempt could be somewhere in the mid 7s, and bounce back the efficiency somewhat, get some more volume in this offense. Again, I wouldn't expect Stefanski to just bail on a pass-heavier offense after 1 year. Now, we also have personnel moves that are signaling to us that this is what they want to do, right? They let go Dearness Johnson. They let Kareem Hunt walk. So they're not bringing another running back next to Nick Chubb so that they can have a tandem backfield and run the ball 20-plus times a game. They also traded for Elijah Moore, and then they used another day 2 pick on Cedric Tillman after drafting David Bell the year before and Anthony Schwartz the year before. They keep investing in this wide receiver position group. They keep investing in tight end, right, where they had Njoku and they drafted Harrison Bryant. Of course, they haven't invested in it recently, but they just keep on backloading these position groups, and I have to believe that they are going to want to pass more in what is a pretty loaded AFC, where I think a lot of these teams are looking around and seeing the only way you're going to really get out of the AFC is if you can pass the ball and go toe-to-toe with a team like the Chiefs. I mean, Deshaun Watson, in his Texan days, almost beat the Chiefs in round 1. Of course, the Chiefs came back, crazy deficit or whatever, but Deshaun Watson, on what was not the best team on the Texans, nearly went toe-to-toe with Mahomes. So this is also a great quote from Matthew Berry here, where he says, now Matthew Berry does an article every offseason right around draft time. I bring up this quote before, but I wanted to bring it up again. And one of his takeaways from the combine is he just like listens to executives and kind of sees what the buzz is around the NFL. One of them was this. He said Cleveland's offense is going to be really interesting next year. Look for the Browns to add a speed wide receiver this offseason to go with Amari Cooper, which was Cedric Tillman, Elijah Moore. They added wide receivers there. One source told me they are really going to open up the offense. Go 5 wide, pass a lot, which adding all these wide receivers, that would make sense. This is going to be Deshaun Watson's offense, not Nick Chubb. They will pass a lot more than folks expect. I was told to go look at the Browns-Steelers game from Week 18. In that game, the opening kickoff temperature was in the 30s. Cold as hell, and the over-under was 39.5. People expected a low-scoring, cold weather, typical AFC North game. Instead, even as cold and windy as the conditions were, Cleveland threw it 29 times while Nick Chubb ran it 12 times in a 28-14 loss for the Browns. Yes, they were down, and my source said this will be much closer to the norm for Cleveland next season. Tons of pass attempts for Watson, likely closer to 40 a game in reasonable weather, with like 12 rush attempts for Chubb and maybe a few touches for Jerome Ford. Now, I'm not going to 12 rush attempts for Chubb a game is just false. There's just no way that happens. But the pass attempts are going to be there. It seems like there is an effort here from the Browns front office and Kevin Stefanski now to make this a more modern, passing-oriented offense, which is really, really exciting because we can bet on this Browns offense at a discount to bounce back like we saw with the Eagles last season. Now, when we look at their values on Underdog, I think the two guys that really stick out to me are Deshaun Watson, for sure. He is QB9. He's going around like pick 80, where if guys like Lamar, I love Lamar, but he's going like pick 31, Deshaun probably shouldn't be all the way at pick 82. Right, I think you have like Herbert and Justin Herbert as well in like the 60s. So he's probably priced about right, but he's in a range where I'm taking him a good bit. I also love Elijah Moore. He's out to the top 40 wide receivers. It wouldn't shock me at wide receiver 48 if he paid off somewhere in that like wide receiver 20 to wide receiver 30 range, give you some spike weeks, was a nice safety blanket for Deshaun Watson. I think that Deshaun Watson kind of made Kiki Kuti relevant for like one stretch of games with the Texans. You could see Elijah Moore in a similar role there. I'll say Nick Chubb and Amari Cooper are probably priced appropriately, but still guys I'm drafting, and I really like Nick Chubb this year. I don't know that I'll push him up much higher than like mid-second of redraft, but you guys know I've been pretty adverse to Nick Chubb in years past, but I really like the idea here of them not adding any more running backs, wanting to pass the ball more, and Nick Chubb running more routes in a thinner backfield here. If you flash back to freshman year for Nick Chubb, he was in an offense with Todd Gurley, Sony Michel, and he had 18 of 38 running back catches that year. He had 18 catches in a really stacked backfield and led those running backs in catches as a freshman. Now, he never saw 18 catches again from there on, but 18 catches at Georgia in a packed backfield as a freshman is really impressive. Nick Chubb can catch passes. Of course, we're not saying he's going to lead the league in catches, but he could be in that like 50-plus Josh Jacobs type range that we've been accustomed to the last 2 years, which would be a pretty big leg up on Nick Chubb's career high of 36 catches in the NFL. So just be on the lookout for that. I think he can catch more passes. I think the offense is going to move the ball a little bit easier this year. So a lot of things to be excited about. I also absolutely love David Njoku, and I think Donovan Peoples-Jones really the only one I'm not really drafting here. I think Cedric Tillman is a fun flyer as well, along with Jerome Ford. Nice handcuff there. Now, this one is more off the wall, a little bit more of a Hail Mary here. I think we have a lot less to go off in terms of data and reasoning for why this team is going to make that Eagles-type jump. But let's talk about the Chicago Bears. Now, like I said, they don't really have anything inherently there where the coach, to me, has showed signs he's going to pass the ball more, right? We have like Todd Monken, who has a ton of data. Kevin Stefanski had his highest pass attempt offense last year. Luke Getsy, the Bears offensive coordinator, hasn't really given us any indication why he would want to pass the ball more. I mean, his other jobs before offensive coordinator have been wide receiver coach, QB coach, and passing coordinator. I believe he was passing coordinator with the Packers before he went to the Bears. So, those are more passing-oriented, like assistant-type jobs, but I wouldn't make any big takeaways there. Our other data point here is that he was Mississippi State's offensive coordinator in 2018, who had the second lowest passing yards per game in the SEC. Now, to be fair, Nick Fitzgerald was their quarterback, who was pretty brutal, but there's not a lot there to tell me that Luke Getsy is going to open up this offense more. Now, what I will say is the front office has kind of been showing us that where, from a personnel perspective, it seems like they want to pass a little bit more here. Now, I think that on top of adding guys like DJ Moore, right, they get a true wide receiver one in DJ Moore. They traded for Claypool last season at the end of last season. They spent a high pick for him. They spent a top 10 pick on offensive line this year. They are just surrounding Fields with weapons. They are giving him time in the pocket. They want to see if he can take that next step as a passer. And I think the exciting part is, in terms of attempts, is that while Luke Getsy might not skew pass attempts, we have one of the worst defenses in the NFL here. Mike Clay gives out unit grades for every single offense, defense, whatever. He has the Bears at the 29th best defense. They were awful last year. If you guys remember, there was a stretch of games where once Roquan Smith was traded from the Bears, they fell apart. Every single game was like a 35-30 shootout, and Justin Fields would have to kind of save the day every time. And this defense still has a lot of similar holes to what they had last offseason. So we could see more shootouts in that type of, defense giving up too many points, playing fast, Justin Fields playing hero ball. And that, of course, is great for fantasy, as we saw last season. Now, the problem here, the thing that we really need to happen is Justin Fields has to take a step forward as a passer, similar to kind of what we saw from Jalen Hurts last year. And to this point, Justin Fields has been a pretty rough passer. This is from an article, Timo Riesk. I don't know if I'm saying his name right, but he works for PFF, and he put together Justin Fields' EPA per play without using scrambles. Now, EPA per play is just on a per play basis. What is your efficiency like? What are you contributing on offense? And his EPA per play in his first 2 years, not counting his scrambles or his legs, were right there with a rookie Josh Rosen. Now, he goes on to say kind of the reason that the Bears shouldn't draft somebody first overall, right? This is when they had the pick. They shouldn't draft somebody first overall. Is Justin Fields' physical tools, unlike Josh Rosen, are why he can kind of exceed these limitations, right? His legs give him a little bit of a higher floor. His physical tools give him a higher ceiling. Maybe he can develop as a passer. And that's what we're hoping for here. And the thing about Justin Fields, people have already sort of given up on him as a passer. I can't just yet. This is somebody who was not a project coming out of college. He was not an Anthony Richardson where you have to kind of like pin things together and, say, oh, his completion percentage was bad, but he was inexperienced. No. Justin Fields, when you look at what Justin Fields was in college, he went toe-to-toe with any pocket quarterback prospect you have out there. These are some of the ones from just recent memory where we have like Tua, Trevor Lawrence, Bryce Young, CJ Stroud, Anthony Richardson, Joe Burrow. I mixed in Anthony Richardson so you kind of see what a project quarterback would look like on these charts. Now, what's charted here is you have adjusted yards per attempt, which is just yards per attempt, a really nice way to just see your efficiency on a per attempt basis, and then completion percentage. How accurate are you? And Justin Fields is in the mix with some of the best pocket passer QB prospects we've seen in recent memory, right? Year 2, he's right in the mix in terms of completion percentage with Tua, Bryce Young. He's a little bit under CJ Stroud. Year 3, he's right in the mix there, just behind Tua, ahead of Trevor Lawrence, ahead of CJ Stroud, ahead of Bryce Young. Anthony Richardson, you could see, not even close in either of those. And then you can see adjusted yards per attempt. He is still just fine in the mix, right? Him and CJ Stroud are right there in year 2. In year 3, he is right in the mix with Trevor Lawrence and Bryce Young. He is somebody who came out of school with a physical profile that was similar to Anthony Richardson, who also had the pocket passing profile of some of the best pocket passers we've seen as prospects. That's why I was so high on Justin Fields coming out. He could do it all. He also is somebody who came in to college as a 5-star recruit, one of the highly recruited quarterbacks of, like the 21st century is what I would say. Like Trevor Lawrence overshadowed him a ton, but Justin Fields was literally right there. This is a guy as well in college, 68.4% completion percentage, accurate, 67 touchdowns to 9 interceptions. Doesn't make a ton of mistakes. Those are a ton of touchdowns. 9.2 career yards per attempt, also wild. You can also throw deep passes, right? CJ Stroud had a 51% career completion percentage on passes of 20-plus yards. Fields had 50%. So he's right there with CJ Stroud as a deep thrower, as an accurate thrower. Going toe-to-toe with a guy like Stroud, who's one of the better pocket passing QBs we've seen as a prospect in a similar offense with like similar weapons. It's just impressive, given the fact that Justin Fields last year was like the most electric quarterback on the ground. So I want to bet on him one last time here. Like, I think if he can't put it together as a passer this year, and at least become, like league average as a passer, not, bottom 5 as a passer, then it becomes pretty tough. But they finally put the tools around him. There's enough to kind of bet on here where they're adding tools around him. He's progressing. He's kind of learning the sport a little bit better here, just kind of what NFL high-speed football looks like. I just have to bet on that. I have to bet on that. I think if there was a guy who could take that year 3 jump, similar to what we saw with Jalen Hurts last year, to me, I would want to be betting on Justin Fields, and then also the rest of this offense too, right? The rest of this offense kind of benefits from that. We get more pass attempts if the defense sucks, and if Justin Fields can actually be a competent thrower, we'll have more pass attempts. I think Justin Fields is appropriately priced there. I think DJ Moore, he's slipping into the 5th round. I think he's a 5th round smash every time he gets there. Everybody is scared off by a low volume pass offense. I think Mooney and Claypool are fine flyers. And then I like mixing in any of these 3 running backs between Khalil Herbert, Roshan Johnson, Deonta Foreman. I think all of them have the upside to be sort of what Miles Sanders was for the Eagles last year, and be a top 12 to like 20 type running back in fantasy. So there's a lot to like here. I also don't mind Cole Kmet, but I'm only really taking Kmet to stack to Justin Fields. I don't really like having a one-off Cole Kmet. If Cole Kmet's your guy, then he's your guy, but he's not really my cup of tea as a tight end. Now, that is going to do it for us today. Again, if you haven't already, make sure you check out Underdog Fantasy. They have the biggest fantasy football contest ever, Best Ball Mania 4. $25 to enter. We have a link in the description. We'll have a link at the top of the comments below. You click it, it'll take you there. It'll put my promo code RON in there for you. It'll match your deposit up to $100. You can get drafting as soon as today. Now, if Best Ball Mania is a little bit too steep, I guess it's a little bit too steep for the beginners out there. The Poodle is out right now, but it's going to close. We're going to post this video Wednesday night. My guess for the Poodle is it's going to close by Friday, so get in there quickly. I don't know how many of these Poodles are going to do. Make sure you're in there. $7 to join the Poodle. Much more beginner friendly. You can't have 150 entries in there. Of course, as always, if you enjoyed, subscribe, leave a like, and I will see you guys in the next one.
I got the juice, I got the juice.
Channel, Chatham's on. Foolies glad I'm home. Even my haters kinda glad I'm on. Rest in peace to my vagabond. Rapper, song, singer, suspended, subpoenaed for misdemeanors. Dreamer, held back asses, Loki still a deer. And I still shake a bull squat.